While Congress demands answers on explosive reports that the White House was briefed on intelligence suggesting Russian operatives were putting bounties on the lives of American service members in Afghanistan. And joining us now with their perspectives on all of that and more are Congressman Rodney Davis, a Republican representing Illinois' 13th district, which includes Taylorville and parts of Springfield; Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, a Democrat representing Illinois' 9th District, which includes parts of Chicago's North Side and northern suburbs; and Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, a Democrat representing Illinois' 8th District, which includes Elgin, Schaumburg, and Addison. And yesterday, the White House briefed Republicans about Russia allegedly putting bounties on American soldiers' heads. The Democrats were briefed this morning, and here's some reaction to the president denying he was briefed and questioning the veracity of the intelligence.
The president called this a hoax publicly. Nothing in the briefing that we have just received led me to believe it is a hoax.
The evidence is still being gathered, in essence, by the intelligence agencies. And if it's found out that this is true, then obviously there needs to be a pretty harsh response to that.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, you were briefed on some of this intelligence suggesting that Russians put bounties on the heads of service members in Afghanistan. What did you learn from those briefings?
Well, I can't comment on the classified information that was shared with us, except what I will say is that if the allegations are true, then the president must condemn and then must take action with regard to the situation, because as you know, it's his #1 duty, or among his top priorities, to protect our national security and, of course, to protect our soldiers.
Congressman go ahead, Congresswoman Schakowsky.
Yeah, if I could, I spent 8 years on the Intelligence Committee, and the idea that the president was unaware of something as big as this is just really hard to swallow. This kind of accusation doesn't come every day. And if there's an intelligence report that confirmed that, it's just inconceivable that it would not get up to the President of the United States. Inconceivable.
Congressman Davis, do you believe the president that he wasn't aware of this intelligence and some of the other statements that the intelligence is not conclusive on this yet?
Well, I don't have any reason not to, and facts matter. Let's let the facts play out. We've got to determine if our intelligence agencies had any credible information. As my colleague Mr. Kinzinger said in your opening statement, we've got to make sure that we get to the bottom of this. We need to find out if it's been verified, if it was shared at any level within the intelligence community. I called for investigations and I called for answers, and we're still waiting for the facts to get those answers. And playing politics with our troops and putting them in political games is really not something that anybody out here in Washington should be doing.
Although, Congressman, multiple news outlets have confirmed these intelligence reports, is there action that you think should be taken against Russia if indeed they do prove to be true?
Oh, 100%. This administration has been harsher on Russia than previous administrations. There's no Russian reset button. We provided lethal aid under this administration to the Ukrainians when the previous administration provided blankets. We've put more sanctions on Russia in this administration than the previous administrations. I would assume that if this bears out, that Vladimir Putin or anybody with the GRU wanted to kill American troops and put bounties on their head, that they're going to be dealt with very harshly by this administration.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, how does the House plan to investigate these allegations, and who do they plan to call to testify?
Well, within our House Intelligence Committee, we're going to be demanding answers from the DNI, Mr. Ratcliffe, as well as other members of the intelligence community. I think it's very important at this point that we take a bipartisan approach on this issue, which is that if the Russians are going to put a price on our troops' heads, we are going to deal with them very seriously. And unfortunately, the body language and the rhetoric coming from President Trump doesn't signal that. He doesn't even want to say that if this is true, regardless of whether I knew about it specifically 3 months ago or not, but if this is true, I am going to upgrade the Russians. I'm going to sanction the Russians. I'm going to do whatever it takes to prevent this from happening again, and then some. That is disturbing, and that follows a pattern of unfortunately cozying up to Vladimir Putin, who is not a friend of the United States.
Congresswoman Schakowsky, should Congress and the White House wait until there is apparent consensus in the intelligence community before taking action?
I think we need to begin an investigation. This is so serious. There seem to be reports of actual people who have been killed that may be the victims of this deal that Russia made. And so I think we have to start, and our intelligence community has to start right away. And the intelligence committee needs to have the full story.
Okay, let's move on to coronavirus today. Dr. Fauci warned of potential 100,000 new cases per day and that a vaccine is still a long way off. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
I still think that one can say that I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have one or maybe more candidates of vaccines that could be available and be effective by the end of the year, the beginning of 2021.
Congressman Davis, with the EU announcing that it will be closed to travelers from the U.S. and a handful of other countries as coronavirus cases surge, a sign here that the efforts to contain it and get rid of it have failed.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure. I mean, we have a disease we're dealing with that nobody knew existed a year ago on Earth. You know, we have Dr. Fauci talking about a vaccine in less than a year of development, of multiple vaccine possibilities. We're doing what we can by learning on the fly how to deal with this disease. And clearly, there were those who didn't practice social distancing, didn't practice the proper procedures. We've seen a surge in certain areas in our nation, be it Florida, be it Arizona, California, and others. But still, we're seeing those being infected are in a less vulnerable age population, which is good, which still gives us the opportunity to treat those who this disease attacks the most. But we've got to be cautious. And I'm glad that we're being cautious in Illinois at this point, although downstate, where I'm from, we've reached the metrics that have been laid out by our governor weeks ago. And I'm glad we're beginning the slow reopening, and I certainly hope we can continue to see positive results.
All right, we want to talk more about this in a bit, but we're going to have to leave it there for now. We'll have more with our guests a little later in the show, including their thoughts on police reform and DACA, so please stay.